The rhythmic clatter of tools and the distinct scent of motor oil filled the air at Thompson's Auto Care, a humble repair shop on the outskirts of a peaceful little town. Inside, Ethan Walker, a 36-year-old mechanic, worked diligently beneath the hood of an old, battered sedan, humming quietly as he tightened a few bolts. Life had never been particularly easy for Ethan, but he had always found purpose in his work. To him, fixing cars wasn't just about engines and gears. It was about restoring people's peace of mind, one small act at a time. This is Tales of Kindness. I'm so glad you're here, where we celebrate the power of kindness in everyday moments. If you enjoy this space, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep our community growing. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when a hesitant knock echoed from the garage door. Wiping his grease-covered hands on a rag, Ethan turned to see a young boy, older than 10, seated in a wheelchair just outside the open door. Beside him stood a woman, likely in her mid-30s, with tired yet gentle eyes. She carefully pushed the wheelchair forward, offering a hesitant smile. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Are you Ethan Walker?" "That's me," Ethan replied, stepping out from behind the car. "What can I do for you?" The boy looked up shyly. His legs were covered with a faded blanket, and his wheelchair looked well-worn, scuffed, patched and visibly damaged. One wheel wobbled unsteadily, and the armrest was barely holding together, secured with layers of duct tape. "My son Ben," the woman began hesitantly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "His wheelchair has been giving us a lot of trouble. We've tried getting it fixed, but no one seems able to help. Someone in town mentioned that you're good with just about anything that has wheels." Ethan crouched down to Ben's level, offering him a warm smile. "Well, they weren't wrong," he said kindly. "Mind if I take a look?" Ben nodded, his blue eyes reflecting a quiet glimmer of hope. Ethan wheeled the chair into the garage, positioning it under the bright overhead lights. As he examined it, he quickly realized it wasn't just one issue. There were several. The wheel bearings were shot, the frame was bent, and the brakes were barely functional. Glancing back at the mother and son, who stood watching anxiously, Ethan let out a small sigh. "This isn't a quick fix," he admitted, "but I think I can get it working again." The mother's shoulders sagged in relief. "Thank you," she murmured. I don't know how much this will cost." But Ethan shook his head, cutting her off gently. "Don't worry about that. I'll handle it." Her eyes widened. "But no buts," Ethan insisted, already pulling out his tools. "Ben needs his wheels, and I've got the tools and the time. That's all that matters." For the next several hours, Ethan worked with unwavering focus, straightening the frame, replacing the bearings with spares he had on hand, and reinforcing the armrests. He even polished the wheelchair, making it look nearly brand new. As he worked, he chatted with Ben, asking about his favorite movies, books, and hobbies. At first, Ben was shy, answering with little more than nods or single words. But as the repairs continued, his shyness melted away. Soon he was laughing, telling Ethan all about his love for space exploration and how he dreamed of designing rockets one day. Finally, after what felt like both a long and rewarding effort, Ethan stepped back, wiping his brow. "All done," he announced, wheeling the chair back toward Ben. Ben's eyes lit up as he reached out, running his hands along the smooth, polished frame. "It looks amazing," he exclaimed, his voice filled with pure joy. "Give it a spin," Ethan encouraged. Ben hesitated for only a moment before maneuvering himself into the chair. He moved forward, backward, and then spun in a small circle, breaking into laughter as he did. "It's perfect." He beamed. His mother wiped at her eyes, emotion evident in her expression. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to repay you." Ethan waved a dismissive hand. "You don't owe me anything," he said with a grin. "Seeing that smile is more than enough." As the mother and son left, Ben waving excitedly from his newly repaired wheelchair, Ethan felt an unexpected warmth settle in his chest. He hadn't just fixed a wheelchair, he had given a boy his independence back. And though he didn't think much of it at the time, that single act of kindness would soon change his life in ways he never imagined. Weeks passed, and life at Thompson's Auto Care returned to its usual rhythm. Late nights, countless repairs, and the ever-present scent of oil and rubber. While Ethan often thought back to Ben and his mother, he never expected anything to come of it. He didn't do things for recognition. He simply helped when he could. Then one crisp Saturday morning, something strange happened. The garage was filled with the usual clinking of tools and the low rumble of an engine being tested when Ethan heard an unusual sound outside. At first, he thought it was a plane from the small airport on the edge of town. But as the sound grew louder, he stepped outside, shielding his eyes from the sun. Charles smiled, his expression warm and sincere. "You earned it, Ethan. You went out of your way to help my nephew when no one else would. That kind of kindness deserves to be recognized." Ben's mother stepped forward, her hands clasped together. "You didn't just fix his wheelchair," she said softly. "You gave my son his freedom back. He's been happier than I've seen him in years. And for that, we'll always be grateful." Ethan looked at Ben, who was beaming in his chair, spinning the wheels back and forth with ease. The sight filled him with a deep, indescribable satisfaction. Still, something about the grant felt too much. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked, his voice hesitant as he glanced at the document in his hands. "I mean, this is more than I could ever ask for." Charles chuckled. "I'm very sure." Then he glanced around at the small, worn-down garage. "You do great work, Ethan, but I can see you're working with limited resources. Imagine what you could do with an expansion. More space, better equipment, maybe even a few extra hands to help out." Ethan exhaled slowly, staring at the paper again. The reality of it was sinking in. A new chapter of his life was unfolding before his eyes, one he had never anticipated. The crowd, still gathered around, began murmuring excitedly. Some of Ethan's regular customers patted him on the back, congratulating him. "I always knew you had a heart of gold," one man said. "You deserve this, Ethan," another added. Feeling overwhelmed, Ethan finally turned back to Charles and extended his hand. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I don't know how I can ever repay you for this." Charles shook his head. "You already have, by reminding us that kindness still exists in the world." Just then, Ben wheeled closer, looking up at Ethan. "You're my hero," he said with a grin. Ethan chuckled, ruffling the boy's hair. "Nah, kid, you're the hero." As the jet prepared to take off, Charles and his sister gave Ethan one final handshake before heading back inside. Ben, however, hesitated at the bottom of the steps. "Hey, can I visit again?" he asked, looking hopeful. Ethan smiled. "Any time, buddy." Ben's face lit up, and with one last wave he followed his family aboard. The sleek jet roared to life and ascended into the sky, disappearing beyond the horizon. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving Ethan standing in front of his garage, still holding the grant papers. He turned toward his newly gifted toolbox, running his fingers over the metal once more. The reality of what had just happened still felt surreal. A new beginning, a second chance, not just for his shop, but for himself. Over the next few weeks, things moved faster than Ethan could have ever imagined. Construction crews arrived to expand the shop, bringing in fresh supplies, state-of-the-art equipment, and brand-new signage. Thompson's Auto Care was transforming before his eyes. The once small, cramped workspace was now spacious and efficient. New employees were hired. Local mechanics looking for work, young apprentices eager to learn. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt like he wasn't just getting by. He was thriving. News of the story spread, and soon more customers started showing up, not just for car repairs, but to support a man whose kindness had come full circle. And then, one afternoon, just as Ethan was finishing up work on a sedan, he heard a familiar voice. "Ethan!" He turned just in time to see Ben rolling up in his wheelchair, his mother beside him. But this time something was different. Ben wasn't just sitting in his chair. He was standing. Ethan's eyes widened. "You're walking?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Ben nodded excitedly. "It's still hard, but I've been practicing with physical therapy, and my new wheelchair helped me a lot." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. Ben took a few careful steps toward him before grinning. "I told you I wanted to be an engineer, right?" Ethan nodded. "Well," Ben continued, "I decided I want to build things that help people, like you helped me." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head in amazement. "Kid, you're gonna change the world one day." Ben grinned, "Just like you did for me." As the sun set over the town, Ethan stood outside his newly renovated garage, watching Ben and his mother leave. He thought back to that night, when a tired woman and a shy boy had arrived at his shop with nothing but a broken wheelchair and a little hope. One small act of kindness had started it all, and in return, kindness had changed everything. Ethan Walker didn't set out to be a hero. He was just a mechanic doing what he could. But sometimes, the simplest good deeds have the power to shape lives in ways we never see coming. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan's garage, now officially renamed Walker's Auto and Repair, became more than just a place for fixing cars. It became a hub of community support, a space where people knew they could rely on not just quality service, but also genuine kindness. With the grant money and his new high-end tools, Ethan was able to take on more jobs than ever before. He hired 2 new apprentices, Jake and Sam, both young men eager to learn the trade. He also brought in Maria, a skilled mechanic who had struggled to find steady work in the male-dominated field. Under Ethan's guidance, they weren't just fixing cars, they were learning the value of integrity and hard work. Ben became a frequent visitor at the shop. True to his word, he threw himself into his studies, fascinated by how machines worked. Ethan would often find him in a corner, sketching designs for wheelchairs, prosthetics, and other assistive devices. One afternoon, as Ethan was working on an old pickup truck, Ben rolled in with a notebook full of schematics. "Ethan, check this out," Ben said, flipping through the pages. "I've been working on a design for a motorized wheelchair with an adaptive suspension system. It could help people who need more stability when moving around rough surfaces." Ethan raised an eyebrow, thoroughly impressed. "Kid, this is some serious engineering. Where'd you learn all this?" Ben grinned. "Online, mostly, and, well, watching you fix things." Ethan chuckled, ruffling Ben's hair. "You keep this up, and one day you'll be designing cars better than the ones I fix." Ben's eyes gleamed with determination. "That's the plan." Meanwhile, word of Ethan's generosity and the unexpected success of his garage continued to spread beyond their small town. Articles were written about him, and local news stations covered his story. People began reaching out, not just for repairs, but for advice, mentorship, and sometimes just a reminder that good people still existed in the world. One day, Ethan received a letter in the mail. It had an official-looking seal and was addressed directly to him. Curious, he tore it open and read the contents. "Dear Mr. Walker, on behalf of the National Mechanics Association, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a recipient of this year's Community Impact Award. Your story of kindness, dedication, and selflessness has inspired many, and we would be honored to recognize your contributions at our annual gala in New York City." Ethan blinked. "New York City," he muttered to himself, hardly believing what he was reading. Jake, one of his apprentices, peeked over his shoulder. "Dude, are you famous now?" Maria smirked. "Looks like it." Ethan sighed, shaking his head with a chuckle. "I'm just a guy who fixes things." Ben, who had been listening nearby, grinned. "Yeah, but you fix more than just cars." Ethan exhaled deeply, folding the letter. He had never sought recognition for what he did, but if this could inspire more people to be kind, then maybe it was worth it. A few weeks later, Ethan found himself in a suit, a rare sight for a man who spent most of his days in grease-streaked overalls. He stood in a grand banquet hall, surrounded by industry leaders, philanthropists, and innovators. When his name was called, he stepped onto the stage to receive his award. The applause was overwhelming, but all he could think about was the night Ben and his mother had walked into his shop with a broken wheelchair. That single moment had changed everything. When it was time for him to speak, he cleared his throat and addressed the audience. "I'm not sure I belong up here," he admitted, earning a chuckle from the crowd. "I'm just a mechanic from a small town. I didn't set out to win awards or make headlines. I just wanted to help a kid who needed his wheels fixed." He paused, scanning the room. "But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that kindness has a way of coming full circle. A simple act, one moment of compassion, can ripple out in ways you never expect." Ethan glanced at Ben, who was sitting near the front with his mother. The boy beamed up at him, his confidence shining through. "So, if my story means anything," Ethan continued, "it's a reminder that we all have the power to make someone's life a little better. You don't need money, fame, or special skills to change the world. Sometimes all it takes is a willingness to lend a helping hand." The crowd erupted into applause as Ethan stepped away from the podium, feeling more humbled than ever. When he returned home, life at the shop carried on as usual. The recognition hadn't changed him. He still spent his days covered in oil, fixing engines, and teaching his apprentices the tricks of the trade. But something was different. There were more people stopping by, not just for car repairs, but for advice, inspiration, or simply to pay it forward. A single mother who needed help with her vehicle, a struggling young man looking for mentorship, a veteran who needed his mobility scooter repaired. Ethan helped them all, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And then, one evening, as he locked up the shop, Ben approached him with an excited look in his eyes. "I got accepted," Ben announced, practically bouncing on his feet. "Accepted?" Ethan asked, raising an eyebrow. "Accepted where?" Ben took a deep breath before grinning. "MIT. I got into their engineering program." Ethan's jaw dropped. "Kid, that's incredible." Ben nodded. "And you know what? I'm going to specialize in assistive technology. I want to build things that help people, just like you helped me." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He pulled Ben into a firm hug. "I'm proud of you, kid. You're going to do amazing things." Ben grinned. "I learned from the best." As the sun set over the quiet town, Ethan stood outside his garage, watching the lights flicker on in the distance. He had started out as just a mechanic, fixing cars in a small shop. But somehow, along the way, he had fixed more than just machines. He had helped rebuild lives, restore hope, and inspire others to do the same. And in the end, that was the greatest repair job of all. This has been Tales of Kindness. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's continue to spread kindness one story at a time. And remember, one small act of kindness can change everything.